There is a fact of life that things never stay the same. They change. And sometimes they change quite unexpectedly, quite dramatically. It's a fact of life that death is around, and it can hit any time. Disease is around. It can hit us any time when we don't expect. And so in marriage, we got to be ready and prepared to change. And sometimes, because we're not prepared, because we do not expect change, and we think that somehow everything is going to be the same and everything is going to be fine, when change happens, we're shocked. Sometimes change is necessary. You're here because you hope that at the end of these teachings that something will change, something is going to make a difference, and so sometimes change is necessary. Come with me to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and I want to read from verse 1 to 15. This is Solomon speaking about life and about the seasons of life, and he has a very realistic view of life. And he says here, there is a time for everything, actually. This is what he says. And I think there is a tremendously helpful lesson that we can get out of these words. Let's read them together. For is a time for everything, there is a season. A time for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to harvest. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to cry and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to turn away. A time to search and a time to quit searching. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be quiet and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet, God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. But look at verse 14. And I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose is that people should fear Him. What is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. Really, what Solomon is teaching us, that this life is subject to change. There is a time for everything. However, when we make this commitment to be married to one another, we make this commitment for life. Knowing and accepting that life will change, that God will allow things to come our way, to test us. However, marriage needs to remain a constant in our lives. And therefore, what we need to do is to try and, as a married couple, as people living together, sharing life together, coming to that place where we can adapt to these changes, where we can be flexible and understand the times and the changes that are happening. So really what I want to learn this evening is trying to deal with the changes that are coming our way. Really, we come into marriage thinking that as women, you probably think, I'm getting married and he'll change. I'm going to change him. And he never does. Or the guy thinks that, I'm getting married and she's going to stay just the same. She will never change. She's going to be slim and beautiful and just the way, I married. And she does change. And so we got to understand that this idea of living happily ever after belongs to fairy tales, that the reality is that things do change. And we got to face this reality in life. Specialists tell us that there are 5 stages to marriage. Let me walk through these things, because as Solomon says, there is a time for everything. So there is a time for this romantic love. You're just starting marriage, it's your honeymoon, you're enjoying each other, everything is fine, you're experimenting together, you're trying to develop intimacy, you fail, you try again, and so this romantic love is exuberant, is young, it's beautiful, but then reality kicks in. Kids come. And I don't know if you noticed, but children can really change your plans. If I think back, it was easy to decide to go on holiday when the children weren't there. Now when the children are there, you start to think about holidays in a very different way. Because you got to think about, we want to go to this lovely place, but what are the kids going to do? So this is where reality comes into place, and this is where a lot of stress can happen in marriage. And then as reality begins to kick in, you've got 2 options. You either make a decision to transformation, or you go separate ways, and you go back to romantic love with another person. Now we know for Christians that's not an option. So what we've got to do is to come to that place where when reality hits and plans change, that we allow God to transform us. And this is why we're here, because we want to learn how to adapt and learn more and get more wisdom from God, so our marriage can be transformed. And this young romantic love can become a mature love. But then there's another stage in marriage that we don't really think about, and very few of us are ever prepared for that, and that is widowhood. And I remember somebody saying, we get prepared for a lot of things in life. Okay, you decide to go on holiday, you get ready. If you're my wife, you get 6 months before time, you start packing. Right? You're thinking about getting married. Right? She's saying something, but I can't hear what she said. But it wasn't nice. I can see you. You think about getting married, right? And you start planning for 1 day, 2 years ahead. For 1 day, you get planning it. Now, you don't know how that day is going to turn out, right? You don't know what's going to happen in the future. But there's one thing that we know it's going to happen. We're all going to die someday. Don't you think we should prepare for those things that are so certain in life than for those that are not so certain? So now we've started this journey together, and because we know things will change, we got to make some plans. So we're going to prepare ourselves. And one thing that we know, that at some point one of us will leave, or maybe together, or do you know what I'm saying? So how much do you spend preparing for that moment? These are all certainties in life. These are the areas that probably will most likely be subject to change in your marriage. There's the area of sex and intimacy, finances. One of you will lose their job, and suddenly you find yourself in this predicament, this change that you did not expect, but it's happening. So how are you going to adapt your marriage to those changes? Because whether we like it or not, these affect our relationship. They affect. And very soon you're going to find a lot of stress, a lot of teasing and bickering that turns into a more of an argument, and that argument turns into an emotional detachment, and that, if it's left, creates more and more problems. Quality time is subject to change, because now you got to divide your time between children and your spouse, between your work and your spouse. And if you allow one of them to take over, soon you're going to find that one thing that is going to suffer is your relationship. You got a job that is going to take you more away from your family. How are you going to adapt that to your family? You got a job that takes you away from your wife. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a job, but what I'm saying is that once that financial or commitment changes, how are you going to adapt your marriage to that change, or how are you going to take that change and adapt it to your marriage? Communication changes. Date nights, they get less and less. That has a strain on your relationship. Responsibility change. I was talking to Craig and Nikki, and currently they're looking after some grandparents. Now you've got children that need a lot of attention. You've got jobs that need a lot of attention. You've got a house that need a lot of attention. And suddenly you have older siblings that you look after. And not only that you look after them, but they have something like Alzheimer's or dementia that adds to the problem. So suddenly you find yourself in this context where there is stress and pressure. And what is going to give in? Your marriage. How do you adapt to that? How do you share that responsibility? We're going to talk about that. This sense of connection will change and will take a lot of beating. Laughter and play. How many of us are still having a good laugh together as married couples? Isn't that amazing? Never stop laughing. Listen to me. If you're a married couple and you stopped laughing, you got to come and see me. I'm serious. I'm serious, because if you do not laugh together, it's most likely that intimacy has gone out of that relationship. Playing together, being silly with one another. It's so precious. And I'm not talking about my children, I'm talking about my wife. Hopes and dreams, they all change. And it's very frustrating when you've had some hopes and dreams, and marriage or family is now changing that. How are you going to adapt to that situation? Because marriage is for life. Does that make sense? Health. Health is subject to change. You're not going to be healthy forever. Something will happen. I got a bit of a shock and a reality check when a couple of weeks ago, Michelle spent the whole week in the hospital. I haven't told her this, but it scared me. I did not expect that. I mean, 2 weeks ago, she was here with me, and a few hours later, everything changed. Commitment is subject to change. Acceptance, respect, dealing with conflict, all these things are areas where they can change. And I told you about that time when you got to make a decision. Is this change going to be transformational, or is this change going to break us? Because the decision is in our hands. Change can be transformational, where you go from this romantic love to reality, and suddenly you got to make a decision, It's either going to make you, it's either going to transform you, or it's going to break you. And if you make a choice to transform you, then you got a huge chance to develop your love relationship into a mature love. And this is how this transformational change can happen. And I told you in the past, over the last few weeks, that there is a very important distinction that we've got to make between building your marriage, which is about dates and dating and spending time together, and building your family, which is spending time with your children, playing with your children, and so on. There are two different, distinct relationships. And we got to understand that between these two distinct relationships, there will be communication, there will be links. However, there gotta be different investments. Because if you sacrifice one, most likely you will sacrifice your marriage, because you think it's worth now to invest in your family, and you're gonna say, do you know what? Children have come along, now it's the time for us to spend investing in our family. And you pour all your time, your effort, your money into family. Then children grow up, they go away, and now you're left with two strangers sharing the same house because you haven't had any sort of intimacy, emotional, physical, or spiritual, because you poured your life into your children and now they're gone. And what you're left with is strangers living in the same house. And it's natural then to emotionally feel already separated. Then you come to the conclusion that probably it's not worth sharing this space together, because it's more. There are more fights than good times, and then divorce. The rate of divorce in people in their 50s and 60s has gone through the roof. Why? Because down the line they stopped investing in their marriage relationship. Life at 60, marriage life at 60 should be better than the one at 20, because you've built an intimacy that cannot be compared with life at 20 or 30 or even 40. So do you see how important this is? We've got to invest in these two relationships separately. We got to keep investing in our marriage as much as we invest in our family. This is what transformational change needs to look like. Let me just be a little bit more specific with this transformational change, because it is important. How do you build your marriage when there is illness or loss? I think when there is an illness that takes place in one of the spouses, I think the best thing to do is to talk to Nan and Norman. Because when one of you gets very ill, God has to give you an extra dose of patience. It's so easy to lose your patience with a person that is not well. And this is where you can grab an older couple that have been there before and say, can you tell us how we can still love one another when there is this illness in between us? How can we keep building our intimacy when we can't do the things we used to do? How can we build our marriage relationship when there is mistrust or infidelity? This is where reality kicks in. Because once this trust is broken, it's going to be very difficult to build anything. And the worst thing that you can do is, let's pretend that nothing happened. Let's move on. I had a couple coming to me once, and they were having tremendous problems, and they didn't know where it was coming from. So I talked to them about their history, relationship, and very soon it came about that about 10 years ago, there was an affair. And so I said, has that been dealt with? And did you talk about it? And said, no. We just, didn't talk about it. We moved on and tried to pretend never happened. And I said, no. That's the worst thing you could do, to pretend that nothing happened. You got to sit down, as painfully as that may be, and take it slow, one step at a time. Deal with the reason why. See if there's any grace and any desire to move forward. Look for the change. And slowly build on it. You can't pretend nothing happened. Somebody has to owe to the responsibility of what happened. If it's one or both, somebody has to say, we messed up. Let's not try and pretend that nothing happened, because the more you do that, the more resentment it builds up. Because we are people that pretend to forget, but we don't forget. Especially when there is a lot of emotional trauma. You want to have intimacy in your marriage? Keep short accounts. Deal with things, although they may be painful. You deal with them now, you may have a chance to build a deeper intimacy based on grace and forgiveness. You don't deal with them now, later on, something is going to trigger that is going to make the past trauma even bigger. So what I'm suggesting is, take it slow. Talk about it. Look for the change. How can we build a marriage when there is increased responsibility? When I was telling you about Craig and Nikki, where there's older siblings that you look after. I truly believe that the only way we can work, it's to work together. Understand that there is a shared responsibility. It's so easy. I don't know about you, but I find it so easy to say, well, it's your relatives. You do it. No, it's family. We got to work together in this. We got to share this responsibility. We got to work together and be flexible. In all these situations, there are some principles that I want to leave with you, and they're just extremely simple and straightforward. Whether it is illness, whether it is infidelity, whether it is more responsibility, number one key principle is that you stay close to God and to one another. When change happens, it's most likely that the devil is going to attack your relationship with God. Guard that with your life. Keep meeting with God. Keep reading His Word. Keep talking to Him about the situation. And stay close to one another. Trevor shared with me something interesting the other day. Do you remember about the triangle I was telling you about 3 weeks ago? God is at the top, you're at the bottom of the triangle. The closer you get to God, the closer you are to one another. But Trevor said to me, Nick, but you see, this base of the triangle is the shortest way to get close to one another. You don't need the top. And I said, whoa, that's interesting. But he said, although it's the shortest way to get close to one another, when you do that without God, you're going to be head on. You're going to collide head on into each other. But if you get closer to God, you're going to travel and journey together with one another. And I thought, wow, that's a revelation. Instead of bumping into each other, you journey together, closer together, because your purpose is to get close to God. Isn't that amazing? The second principle that I found is that you gotta make a decision, which it's not always easy, to allow others to help or to seek professional help together. It seems to me that shyness sometimes stays in the way of progress. Why would I go and tell anybody about my problems in marriage? No. I'm going to get it sorted out myself. Don't be silly and proud. Seek help. Don't go just to anybody and spill out your guts to just anybody, but there's plenty of people around that love you and care for you that will love to give their eyes for you. And so go and seek, let them help you. As I said to you in the first session that we had, one of the greatest blessings that Michelle and I have had was to have people around us that we were able to go and talk to whenever we had questions. It's important to let people help you. Sometimes we get so proud and we think we can solve everything on our own, and it's not helpful. Another principle that I found very useful is that we need to keep communicating more and more, not just facts, but also feelings. And this is where men, we got to learn how to share our feelings. To say, I'm angry, I'm upset, I need to go to my nothing box. I need to have some me time. I need to burn some steam. I'm in pain. Men don't find it easy, but we got to learn. Nobody has died from sharing feelings, man. Nobody's head exploded if they were a little bit more emotional. Sometimes that is useful. And ladies, they communicate with emotion, and so we got to be emotionally connected to our wives. If we don't do that, we're going to lose them on the way. And it's not good for anybody. Establish what the new normal looks like. Because things never stay the same, it's impossible to go to how things were in the past, to normality as it were, because that's impossible. So what we've got to do is to make a decision together that we're going to define what our new normal looks like. There was one way of normality whenever it was just me and Michelle. Now that the children are here, there is a new normal. So if I want to go and play football, or if I want to go into town, or if I need to do anything, I got to go to Michelle and say, honey, I want to go and do this. Do you think you can cope with the children? And she'll say yes, or she'll say no. And then I say, okay, then I'm going to stay. Because I'm not single anymore. Or I'm not without children anymore. There are 3 little kids that demand attention and a lot of care. And they can go nuts sometimes. But that's our new normal. And I got to adapt to that. I can't just get up and go as I please. No, I've got responsibilities now. Does that make sense? So we got to work with each other. We got to allow each other this space, this time together where we can say to each other, how is our new normal looking like? And then implement a new normality that it reflects where we are now. Does that make sense? Yes? Now, there is a couple that I want to ask to come forward, and that is Mark and Delia. By the way, there are a couple of questions that have already come, and so keep sending the questions on that telephone number. We'd love to answer the questions at the end. But Mark and Delia, I'm just going to have a chat with them, especially about dealing with change. Now, Mark and Delia got married very young. They were young and beautiful. They still are. But can you come up, guys? Obviously, you can imagine that as they got married, they had some sort of expectation and dreams and desires for their marriage, and they adapted to change. They got pregnant, and they were expecting, and then change happens. I'm just going to talk to them a little bit about how that looked like and how they were able to cope with that change. So if you want to pick up the microphone and make sure that we get this. By the way, all the sessions are on SoundCloud if you want to share it with your friends. And also, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to try to get the videos sorted out so we can have a video for each session. We're going to be posting them on YouTube, and you can, again, share them. And anyway, so Mark and Delia, change. How did that happen? How were you able to deal with change when it came? Right.
If I will talk, I will cry.
Yeah.
Right, just to make it easier, what did that change look like for you?
Yeah, so everything you've said so far has just been so spot on for us as well, and particularly that last point about the new normal. And I would just say at the start, like, we're not up here as any couple that's getting it right in any way at all. We're just doing our best, so we're not up to give any answers, as it were. We're just one story of many stories in this room, I'm sure. But as you've said, we got married quite young and stupid, I say now.
Thanks.
If anybody of 19 years of age in my family came to me and said, "Oh, I'm getting married," I would be like, "What?" But Delia was 19, I was 21. But anyway, how many years did we have before Anna Lily came along? 8 years. So we kind of had 8 years together, and we very deliberately waited. We knew we wanted to have children, but we very deliberately waited until we felt the time was right. So we travelled, we went to Africa and different things, and we had a great time. We thought, right, now's the time to have a wee family. And we were really looking forward to that and excited about that. So I know we don't have a lot of time. Anna Lily came along. We didn't know that she was going to have any disability whatsoever until she was maybe 3 or 4 months. And we started to see that things were not typical with her. And so that's how the change came, really.
We sort of put it down to being premature, and when you see different children, you think, "Oh, she's gonna do it, gonna catch up. She was 7 weeks premature, so you always put it down to that till a point.
So obviously now you realize that you have, not only that you have a child that has changed your marriage, but now you have a family, which is a different thing, but now you have a child with disability. How did you cope with that change? Because obviously men and women cope differently.
I think certainly for the first while, like, we didn't cope, and many days we still don't cope. And you know, in a way, that's okay. You're going to have days like that. So for the first, it seems probably years, certainly we didn't cope. We just got through each day as best we could, through support from family and friends and so on. You know, but really at the end of the day, when you close the door at night, we're kind of on you're on your own. You know, but I think there comes a point where you realise that. That we're both individuals, and certainly we've realised that much more through this whole experience, that we will both individually react and respond to things differently. and there's no right or wrong in that. You know, Delia will react in a way to Anna Lily differently to me, to the whole thing, and it's recognizing that that's okay. You know, that just because maybe I react in a certain way and Delia does it a different way, or that we're individuals, and we reacted to that change in a different way. But then there's the whole aspect as a couple as well. So individually it changed us so much. It impacted our lives individually so much, but as a couple too. And we just, like you said, you just have to make a choice. Are we gonna work at this, you know? Are we gonna give up? Are we gonna, you know? And it probably Delia more so. You know, she could have told me where to go many times, I'm sure, with the way things have gone. But we just make a choice every day.
It's just a learning curve. You just have to learn how to communicate again with each other. If he does something or like that, not necessarily shout. You just, well, at first it was probably, but then you just have to, rather than having arguments, because I do things differently, probably 24/7 a day, and he probably doesn't hear Anna Lily cry for 2 hours a night, and I'm like, really? Seriously? You did not hear her cry for 2 hours? But no, you just learn, and it is, as Mark said, it's a decision that you have to make, and it's a battle in your mind and in your head, okay, which way to go, what do I do, rather than just jump at it. And
but I think as well, you know, certainly this is very specific to us, so this is very specific to our thing, is that yes, there's the relationship between Delia and I, but for us, I think the thing probably that keeps us going, keeps us together, is actually that wee girl down there. She's the one that keeps us going, you know. That's yes, there's that bond and there's that relationship between us, but there's also that for her. There's the third person in terms of our relationship in the house, you know, and she keeps us together too, doesn't she?
Keeps us strong, and even when the day is like, oh, I can't do it anymore, that's
there's nobody
mine.
else going to do
like
it.
Nobody else, you have to.
I think this is where the marriage and family relationship begin to work together, because in your case, it's not as Anna Lily needs 24/7 care. It's not something that you can put her on the floor and go and do something else, or you can say, go and play with your toys and I'm going to go and do something else. It's part of your complete day. So this is where marriage and family begin to work together, and investing in both is still something that it's necessary. How do you do that?
We have 3 diaries. No, go on ahead.
I'll talk, because then you'll think of things as I'm talking rubbish. What was the question? Yes.
How do you keep the balance between marriage life and family life?
Yeah,
because
so again,
Anna Lily is 24/7.
Absolutely. Yes, I mean, Delia gave up her work whenever Anna Lily was born, and took a career break, and you know, for 3 years we thought, oh well, sure, eventually, you know, Anna Lily will be all right. She'll go to school and all, but that never, you know, she's going to school, but we didn't realise the level of care that she would need. You know, it is 24/7, and it's so Delia is a full-time, you know, at home mum and all the rest of it. We didn't, so that was the first thing really, was making that decision that. But I think, again, going back to the whole individual thing, that we're individuals, and we still need to have our individual lives outside of Anna Lily as well. Delia plays football, and again, she gave that up for a while, but she's been able to get back to that now. So I'm very, very keen that she has her own life away from the house, and has her own friends and things that she does individually on her own, and likewise I have that too. And then together as a couple, it's not as easy. We've a couple of nurses that come into the house once a month to let us go for a night out together, and that just started recently. But again, it's trying just everything that you've said. It's realising that we both still have our individual needs. We still need our own down times, away times, and we need to respect that and give it, allow that to happen. And as a couple as well too,
That's true. So go ahead.
We just sort of learn as well, if we didn't have the opportunity to go out, without Anna Lily or just on our own, then we just had to learn how to enjoy being at home with each other.
So it's adapting to that change and taking the best out of the situation. I think it's crucially important to get this point, Mark, that you're saying. As much as you spend time investing in the marriage and spending time as a family, you also need to allow each other to be individuals and have the me time. We don't have the time to talk about this, but it's crucially important that when in a very tense situation like this, that you learn to spend me time, where you can be an individual, where you can, Michelle often goes out for coffee with Harmony most of the time, and with her sisters and things like that. Her best friend in Bangor, or she goes to see her parents in Bangor, and then I step up to the place and say, "You go ahead. I'm gonna take the kids because you got to have that time," and all this balance. It's important, and it's vital to allow that flexibility. Perfect. Now, Mark, in terms of expressing emotions, I know you've written a few songs, but there's one song that you've never sung in public. Is that correct? And it's about expressing that change in the relationship you have with Anna Lily. Are you going to sing it for us tonight?
Yeah, well, Nick just sort of said, would you sing a song about, there's a song called My Child, which I've sung before in churches, but there's a song that I've written just recently, and in terms of how I again, this is an individual thing, Delia doesn't do this, but my way of expressing myself has always been just to write songs and things like that. So for me, whenever Anna Lily was born, that totally dried up for a few years, and I know we're not going into that whole thing tonight, but with questions, about where was God and all the rest of it. So eventually coming round to a place, and it's been amazing in church on Sunday mornings just to be going through the book of John, and particularly that Sunday morning where the blind man and the question of who sinned for this to happen and all of that, if people hopefully will know what I'm alluding to. But for me, an awful lot of songs now that I write are about healing and about actually God's bringing glory to himself through Anna Lily, and it's taken me a long time to be able to just say that, to understand that. So where we are at the moment is really just, a lot of people know this in church, that we're at the stage with Anna Lily where she's been going back and forth to London an awful lot for the possibility of having brain surgery, this operation that they're hopefully going to offer to her. But I say hopefully now, but there was a time where we had to make a decision if they offer this surgery to Anna Lily, whether we go for it or not. And so this song is really just about just that whole thing of having to make this decision on her behalf. And when I look at her, I'd love her just to be able to say, "Yes, Daddy, I think this would be a good thing." I'd love to hear her voice. I'd love to know what she would think about it. But ultimately, as her parents, she trusts us, and that we'll make the right decision. I'm not going to look at you anymore, because so that the song's about that, and then a wee bit about if we go ahead with the surgery, what will that look like afterwards, for Anna Lily specifically. When you talk to Anna Lily, she, people that talk to her will know this. She doesn't look at you in the eye. She'll look above your head, or she'll look to this. I would just love to just say her name, and for her just to be able to control her head and her eyes, to be able to just look in my eyes. So there's a silly line in the song, "Will you look me in the eye?" That's where that comes from. And will you do this, and will you do that, and all of those things. But then, no matter what it looks like, if we go ahead with this, if she can do those silly things like looking in my eye, or maybe taking my hand or whatever, no matter what happens after the surgery, if we go ahead with it, she will do all of those things and even more, whenever God decides to heal her completely.
Yeah.
Whether that's now in this life or whether that's when she goes to be with him.
Amen.
So that's what the song's about.
Amen. Well, let's listen.
Sorry if we've taken this in another direction or anything, but I would just say that this is a very individual and personal thing, okay? So I don't want to make this all about me and Delia and Anna Lily tonight, but I pray that God will bring glory to himself through this song and through this story and through what we've said. So God, would you just do that? Just take the words of this song and this situation that you're in. We believe that you're real, God, and we pray that you would just use this story, use these words just to bring glory to yourself in Jesus' name. What a tough choice to have to make. No one else can take my place. If only I could see ahead and see the look upon your face. It doesn't get easier. It doesn't begin to make more sense. But it only takes seeing her to muster the reason and the strength. And still your smile lights up each room, and people want to talk to you. You give them strength, you give them joy in the little things you do. It won't make it easier. The comforting things that people say, we'll still have to choose for her. And I wonder, is this the only way? And if you had a voice, if you had a choice, then what would you say? If you had your way, and if you had a choice, and if you had a voice, then what would you say? If you had your way, and will you look me in the eye, and will you say my name? Will you take my hand in yours, and will you feel less pain? Will you blow bubbles by yourself? And will you play outside? And will you sing the songs you love? And lift your hands up high? And if nothing should change, we'll love you the same.
you'll still be our child, and our hope will remain. So if nothing should change, we'll love you the same, and you'll still be our child. Our faith will remain, that you will run and you will dance, and you will lift your hands, and you will sing the songs you love and shout